off with the good news. Whichever individual wins the presidency, I think there's already a bipartisan support, a deep bipartisan support between Republicans and Democrats about the need to have a strong relationship with India, seen as a critical partner in the 21st century. Now, having said that, I think there are at least three major challenges that could arise, whoever comes in. And first of all, let me start with the domestic politics of India, which is going through an extremely turbulent time, and it has been for the last year or so. There's a weak prime minister, enormous amount of challenges, pressures from opposition groups, charges of corruption all around, and so it's very much inward looking right now, very little attention to foreign policy on issues such as foreign investment in multi-brand retail, subsidy cutting and so forth, all of which the US of course wants India to do very quickly, and that's not going to happen, although there has been some movement over the last month on those issues. So I think whoever comes to power is going to have to recognize that democracy is a messy thing here and in India, and understand that it's going to require some patience. The second challenge I see is Iran that could flare up. Now that's going to depend on, I think that could depend on how much more pressure the new US president is going to put on Iran. If it's President Romney, I think the US-India relationship might face a greater test if, in fact, Romney will be pushing Iran, pushing more sanctions and more action on Iran. I think for India, it's a big problem because there's a lot of domestic opposition to any further aggression or assertiveness on Iran because of India's dependence on Iranian oil and gas. But on the other hand, India too doesn't want to see a nuclear-armed Iran. They want to use diplomacy. So I can see how that there might be major issues that could come to a head. And the final thing, number three, would be Afghanistan. And here again, the problem is that there's a huge amount of uncertainty once the US withdraws in 2014. And no matter what the Indian government is saying about its ability to handle the situation and that it's not concerned, the fact is that there's a great deal of concern about what comes next. Now, because one of the problems, of course, is that the US, once it leaves, the question is that the neighbors in the region will be the ones affected. And so will there be rising extremism in India as a fallout of extremists in Afghanistan gaining more power? The Taliban has never been a friend of India's. And so I think there's a great deal of concern over that, whether it's going to go back to the earlier period when there was much more instability in the region. And that brings up the question of India-Pakistan relations and where that could be headed because of what opportunities might rise for Pakistan. So I think these three challenges could affect it. I don't think it's going to derail the India-US relations, but it could certainly slow down the momentum. So at worst, you might get a deep disillusionment between India and the US, and you've got to get stuck in a stalemate. In the best scenario, you realize that even the best of friends disagree on matters, and so you kind of agree to disagree and make progress on lots of other issues like climate change and higher education cooperation and so forth. So I think I would say that the latter is more likely.